It was a quiet evening, the kind where the sky was painted in shades of soft pink and orange, and the air carried the gentle coolness of approaching night. He had finished his work early and decided to take a walk, something he often did to clear his mind. The streets were almost empty, with only a few neighbors tending to their gardens or returning from errands. The peace of the evening made him feel calm, as if the world had slowed down just for a moment. He had walked a few blocks when something unusual caught his attention. A figure was moving quickly across the street ahead, her movements hurried and desperate. At first he thought she might be a child playing or someone late for an appointment. But as he drew closer, he noticed her dress. It was torn in several places, hanging unevenly from her shoulders, and she was barefoot. Her hair was messy, tangled, and fell across her face. Something about her stride, the urgency in the way she ran, made his heart skip a beat. This was not just someone in a hurry. This was someone running from something. He slowed his pace and observed her carefully, making sure not to startle her. She seemed completely absorbed in her escape, her eyes darting around as if looking for a path to safety. Her breathing was rapid, and her small frame carried her forward with surprising strength. He felt a mix of concern and curiosity. Who was she? And what could have happened to make her run like this in the middle of the evening? Cautiously, he called out to her. "Hey, are you okay? Do you need help?" His voice was gentle, careful not to scare her further. For a moment, she didn't respond, as if she hadn't even heard him. Then she slowed slightly, her eyes widening as she noticed him. There was fear in her gaze, but also a hint of relief, as if she had been silently hoping someone would be there. He stepped closer, keeping his hands visible and his tone soft. "You don't have to run. It's okay. I can help." She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder, then back at him. There was a flicker of doubt, of suspicion, but something about his calm demeanor seemed to make her pause. Slowly she stopped, though she didn't move toward him yet. She was still cautious, keeping a few feet of distance between them. I can't go back," she whispered finally, her voice trembling. "He will find me. He has money, power. He'll do anything to get me back." Her words were fragmented, rushed, filled with fear. She looked around nervously, as if expecting someone to appear from the shadows at any moment. He felt a knot form in his stomach. Whatever her story was, it was serious. She wasn't just running from an ordinary situation. He crouched slightly to make himself seem less threatening and said gently, "You don't have to tell me everything right now. Just know that you're safe here. I won't let anyone hurt you." Her eyes searched his face, as if measuring whether she could trust him. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly, and she nodded, though her grip on her torn dress tightened. "I just need a place to rest, to think," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded and gestured toward his nearby apartment. "You can come with me. It's quiet and safe. We can figure things out from there." She hesitated again, then slowly moved toward him, stepping carefully on the uneven pavement with bare feet. Each step seemed painful, but she didn't complain. He offered her his arm, not as a restraint but as support, and she accepted it, leaning slightly on him as they walked. As they reached his apartment, he could see how exhausted she was. Her face was pale, and there were faint scratches on her arms and legs, evidence of a struggle or a hurried escape through rough terrain. He helped her inside and offered her a seat on the couch. "Take a moment to rest. You don't have to speak if you don't want to," he said, bringing her a glass of water. She accepted it shakily, taking small sips as she calmed her breathing. He looked around the room, making sure everything was ready for her to feel comfortable. A warm blanket was draped over the back of the couch, and a few cushions were placed nearby. He didn't press her for answers. He just sat across from her, giving her the space she needed. There was a quiet understanding between them, a recognition that words weren't always necessary to communicate safety and trust. After a few minutes, she finally spoke, her voice low and hesitant. "I was engaged to someone I didn't even know. My family. They said it was for security, for money, but I couldn't do it. I didn't want that life. I didn't want him." She paused, struggling to find the right words. I ran as fast as I could, but he has people looking for me. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to trust." Her eyes welled up with tears, but she quickly wiped them away, as if embarrassed by her vulnerability. He listened quietly, nodding, letting her know that he was present and attentive. He didn't interrupt, didn't judge. Her story was difficult to hear, but he could feel the weight of her fear and the courage it took for her to escape. "You're safe here," he said again, his voice steady. "No one is going to hurt you while you're with me. We'll figure this out together." She looked at him, her eyes searching for honesty, and found it. There was something genuine in his tone, something that reassured her that she wasn't alone. As the evening progressed, they shared small talk to ease the tension, talking about ordinary things, the weather, the neighborhood, even simple memories from childhood. These moments of normalcy helped her relax a little, though the fear never fully left her eyes. He could see that she was still wary, still thinking about what might happen next, but she began to trust him, if only slightly. He offered her a meal, something simple, something to bring her comfort. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, grateful for the care he was showing. He noticed the way she looked around, still alert, still cautious, but the tension in her body was easing. There was a fragility to her, but also a strength that was quietly emerging. The strength of someone who had made a brave decision to take control of her own life. As night fell, he prepared a space for her to sleep, a corner of the room with blankets and pillows. He didn't insist that she explain more of her story, knowing that trust had to be earned, not forced. She thanked him quietly, her voice soft but sincere. There was a sense of relief in her eyes, a small spark of hope that she hadn't felt in days. He sat nearby, reading a book but always aware of her presence. The quiet moments, the simple acts of care, created a bond between them that didn't need words. In that small, ordinary apartment, two strangers found a connection in the midst of fear and uncertainty. One offered safety, the other accepted it, and in that exchange a story was beginning, a story that would change both of their lives in ways they could never have imagined. The night deepened, and the city outside grew silent. The streetlights cast a soft glow through the window, illuminating her peaceful, if uneasy, rest. He looked at her, feeling a protective instinct he hadn't expected. This was not just a fleeting encounter. Something important had begun here, and as he turned off the lights and settled in for the night, he couldn't help but wonder what challenges and surprises the coming days would bring. For the first time since she had run into his life, there was a sense of calm, a sense that maybe, just maybe, she had found a safe place where she could breathe, think, and begin to reclaim her freedom. And he, in turn, felt a strange mix of responsibility and curiosity, knowing that the ordinary evening walk he had taken had turned into something extraordinary, something that would mark the beginning of an unforgettable journey for both of them. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the windows, falling softly across the small apartment. She woke up slowly, the weight of exhaustion still lingering in her body. Last night had been difficult, but for the first time in days she felt a little safer. She looked around, noticing the ordinary details of the room, the books on the shelves, the simple furniture, the way the light touched the walls. Everything felt calm and unthreatening, which was a stark contrast to the chaos of the night before. He was already awake, moving quietly around the kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and toasted bread filled the room. When he noticed her stirring, he offered a warm smile. "Good morning. I made something to eat. You should try to get some energy before we talk," he said gently. She nodded, feeling a small flicker of gratitude. It was a normal, ordinary act, but to her it meant everything. She sat at the table, taking in the aroma and the warmth of the food. It was a strange feeling, sitting here with a stranger who had shown her kindness when she had been at her most vulnerable. She wanted to speak, to share more of her story, but the words felt heavy, like pulling them from a deep, dark well. He seemed to sense her hesitation and didn't press, letting her eat in peace. Finally, after a few quiet minutes, she spoke. "I should tell you more about why I ran. You need to know the truth." He nodded, encouraging her silently. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I was engaged to a man I barely knew. My family. They said it was for security, for stability, but he was wealthy, and his life was completely different from mine. I didn't know him, and I didn't want to spend my life controlled by someone else's expectations. I tried to explain it to my family, but they didn't understand. I felt trapped. So I ran." Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke, and he could see the courage it took for her to admit all of this. He listened carefully, nodding in understanding. "You made a brave decision," he said softly. "It's not easy to go against what people expect from you, even when you know it's right for yourself. She looked at him, a faint smile breaking through her fear. For the first time, she felt that someone truly understood her, that someone wasn't judging her choice. She continued, her words spilling out in a mixture of relief and fear. I tried to leave quietly, but he has people who look after me. I thought I could escape without anyone noticing, but it wasn't that simple. I had to hide, move quickly, and stay alert. Every step was terrifying because I didn't know where to go or who to trust. And then, I ran into you. Her voice faltered, but she took a deep breath and looked at him. I don't know why I trusted you at first, but I'm glad I did. You didn't question me and you didn't push me. You just helped me. That's rare. He felt a mix of emotions, concern for her, admiration for her bravery, and a growing bond that neither of them had expected. He realized that helping her wasn't just about protecting her. It was about supporting someone who had the courage to fight for her freedom. He offered her a reassuring smile. You're safe here and I'll help you figure things out. We'll take one step at a time together. They spent the morning talking quietly, sharing stories of their lives in small fragments. She spoke about her childhood, her dreams, and the things she loved, carefully avoiding the painful memories for the moment. He shared stories from his own life, the simple joys and struggles he had faced. The conversation was light, yet it built trust. They discovered a shared sense of humor and a quiet understanding that went beyond words. Later, she decided to explore the apartment a little, feeling the need to ground herself in this new, safer space. She walked slowly, touching the walls and glancing out the windows. Everything seemed ordinary yet comforting. She realized how much her life had been dictated by others, how little she had felt in control. For the first time, she experienced a sense of freedom, even in small, simple ways. He watched her with quiet admiration, noting the subtle shift in her demeanor. The tension in her shoulders had eased slightly, and there was a tentative curiosity in her eyes. As the day went on, they began to discuss practical matters. She needed to plan her next steps carefully, but she was unsure where to start. He suggested they consider her safety first, finding legal advice and securing her identity if necessary. She appreciated his rational approach, realizing that his calmness could be a lifeline amidst the uncertainty. Together, they brainstormed ways to stay safe, from changing routines to avoiding predictable patterns. Every suggestion they discussed helped her feel a little more in control, a little less like a pawn in someone else's game. Despite the seriousness of the situation, they found moments of lightness. They joked about trivial things, coffee preferences, clumsy habits, and childhood memories. These moments reminded her that life could still have small joys, even in the midst of fear. She laughed quietly at one of his stories, and he felt a warmth spread through him that he hadn't expected. There was a connection forming, a bond built not just on trust, but on shared humanity. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, she began to open up more about her fears. I keep imagining him finding me, she admitted softly. I worry about what he might do, about how far he might go. He reached out gently, placing a hand on hers. We can't predict everything, but we can prepare. You're not alone in this. We'll face it together. The simple words offered a surprising amount of comfort, a reassurance that she had not felt in a long time. She took a deep breath and let herself relax a little, leaning back in the chair. The combination of safety, understanding, and companionship allowed her to release some of the tension that had been building for weeks. She realized that she could breathe again, that she could begin to think clearly about her future, and for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope, a hope that perhaps she could reclaim her life, her choices, and her freedom. As evening approached, they prepared a small meal together. It was simple, but the act of cooking side by side created a sense of normalcy. She noticed how naturally they worked together, anticipating each other's needs without speaking. There was a quiet comfort in the routine, a sense that life could still have ordinary, peaceful moments even amidst the chaos. After dinner, they sat together in the living room, the soft light casting shadows across the walls. She rested her head on the back of the couch, exhausted but calmer than she had felt in days. He noticed the small sigh of relief that escaped her lips and realized how much fear she had been carrying. He didn't need to say anything. The silence itself was comforting. There was a mutual understanding in the quiet space. They were both aware of the challenges ahead, but they were facing them together. Later that night, she shared more of her story, detailing the pressure she had faced from her family and the fear she had endured in the days leading up to her escape. Her words were heavy, but he listened without interruption, offering support through his presence alone. He could see the strength in her, the resilience that had carried her this far, and he felt a deep respect for the courage it had taken to leave everything behind. As the night grew deeper, they discussed the practical steps they would take in the coming days. She needed to find a secure place to stay temporarily, arrange her affairs, and ensure that she could move forward safely. He offered to help with each step, providing guidance, support, and reassurance. Together, they created a plan, small but actionable, that gave her a sense of direction and hope. Before going to sleep, she took a moment to reflect on the day. The fear and uncertainty were still present, but they were now balanced by a newfound sense of security and trust. She realized that she had found someone who not only protected her, but also respected her autonomy, someone who would stand by her without trying to control her. The realization brought a quiet smile to her lips, a small but significant victory in the midst of a turbulent journey. He too reflected on the day, thinking about how a chance encounter had brought this extraordinary situation into his life. He felt a mix of responsibility and admiration, recognizing the courage she had shown and the bond that was forming between them. He understood that their journey was just beginning, but he also knew that together, they could face the challenges ahead. As they settled into sleep, the apartment was filled with a quiet peace. The outside world was unaware of the danger and fear that had touched their lives. But within these walls, there was a sense of safety, understanding, and connection. It was a fragile, tentative peace, but it was enough for now. In that shared quiet, they both understood something important, that even in the darkest moments, human connection, kindness, and courage could provide a lifeline. And in the midst of uncertainty, they had found that lifeline in each other, creating a foundation of trust, support, and hope that would carry them through the days to come. The morning after, the city seemed quieter than usual. She woke slowly, still feeling the weight of exhaustion and tension from the previous days. The quiet of the apartment had become a small comfort, a sanctuary where she could breathe and think. He was already awake, moving carefully around the kitchen, and when she entered, he offered her a warm smile. He had prepared breakfast again, this time including some fruits and fresh bread. The simplicity of it was reassuring, as if the world outside could wait for a little while. She sat down, taking small bites, and they exchanged a few quiet words. Neither spoke about the looming danger immediately. They both knew it would come in its own time. Instead, they shared small, ordinary stories about their lives. She spoke about the places she used to visit as a child, and the little joys she had known before her life became complicated. He shared his own quiet experiences, the simple routines and small adventures that made his world. In these exchanges, there was a sense of grounding, a momentary escape from the fear that always lingered at the edge of her thoughts. But the peace could not last forever. Late in the morning, her phone, which she had been keeping hidden, vibrated with an unknown number. She froze, panic flashing in her eyes. He noticed immediately and asked gently, "Who is it?" She shook her head. "I don't know. I'm scared to answer it. He could be tracking me." Her voice was barely audible, but the fear in it was real. He reached across the table and took her hand. "We'll figure this out. Don't do anything until we're ready. You're not alone in this." His reassurance helped, but her anxiety remained, a reminder that the danger was never far. Throughout the day, they worked together to make a plan. They discussed ways to secure her phone, change her routines, and avoid detection. He suggested temporary measures like avoiding social media, changing locations frequently, and not using her real name when necessary. Each suggestion she followed cautiously, testing their effectiveness. She could feel the tension in her body lessen slightly, not completely gone but manageable with careful planning. They were learning to navigate the fear, to face it with preparation rather than helplessness. As the afternoon approached, they heard noises outside. Footsteps, voices raised in urgency. Her heart raced, and he immediately moved to block her from the window, peering outside himself. A car idled down the street, someone watching from a distance, and he felt a surge of protective instinct. "Stay inside." "Don't show yourself," he whispered. She nodded, gripping the edge of the table. The presence of danger was undeniable, a reminder that their careful planning was necessary. They moved quietly, making sure doors were locked and windows secured, preparing for the possibility that the people pursuing her might try again. Despite the tension, they found small moments of normality. She suggested they water the few plants near the window, and as they moved quietly around the apartment, she felt a strange sense of comfort in the routine. It reminded her of ordinary life, a life she was fighting to reclaim. He noticed the subtle change in her expression, the way her shoulders relaxed just a little when focusing on small tasks. The act of care, simple and unremarkable to most, became a grounding force in the chaos of her world. As evening fell, they prepared to leave the apartment briefly, needing supplies and food. He suggested a route that would avoid the main streets and potential surveillance, and they moved cautiously through the quiet city. She walked close to him, not just for safety but for the reassurance that he provided. Every shadow, every unexpected sound caused her heart to race, but she found strength in his calm presence. He noticed her flinches and held her hand subtly, a small gesture that conveyed protection without restricting her freedom. On their way back, they encountered a minor scare, a man standing on a street corner who seemed to be watching them. She froze, her eyes wide with fear. He pulled her behind a car and whispered instructions to move carefully and remain unseen. The tension was intense, but they navigated the situation successfully, returning to the apartment without being noticed. Her relief was palpable, and he reassured her with a quiet smile, a reminder that courage was not the absence of fear but the willingness to act despite it. Back inside, they sat together, decompressing from the adrenaline of the day. She spoke softly, reflecting on how her life had changed. "I never thought I would have to be this careful. I never imagined that just living could feel like hiding." He nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "You've shown incredible strength. The steps you've taken even to escape require courage, and will continue to take it day by day." His acknowledgement gave her a sense of validation, a reminder that her actions mattered, that her decisions were meaningful. They spent the evening sharing small moments of humor, joking quietly about the unusual circumstances, laughing softly when something reminded them of simpler times. These moments allowed her to release some tension, to feel human again in the midst of fear. She realized that despite the danger, she was beginning to experience small fragments of peace, moments where she could think, laugh, and feel connection without the shadow of threat overwhelming her. Later, they talked about longer-term plans. She needed to secure her safety in ways that went beyond the immediate day-to-day concerns. They discussed options such as temporary relocation, legal advice, and ways to protect her identity. Each step was practical and actionable, giving her a sense of control she hadn't felt in a long time. She was no longer just running blindly. She was planning, thinking ahead, taking control of her life in ways that felt empowering. As the night deepened, the reality of the millionaire's influence loomed in their minds. She explained how he had resources, connections, and people who would do anything to find her. Her fear was real and justified, but so was her growing determination. He reminded her that planning, awareness, and careful action could reduce the risk, that fear did not mean powerlessness. His calm presence continued to be a source of strength, a reminder that she wasn't facing the danger alone. Before going to sleep, they reviewed the day's events, the small victories and the scares alike. She acknowledged the courage she had shown, not just in fleeing but in facing the challenges that followed. He encouraged her, highlighting how her quick thinking and resilience had kept them both safe. It was a quiet, reflective moment, filled with mutual respect and recognition of each other's strength. They had become a team, relying on each other in ways neither had anticipated. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought about how much her life had changed in such a short time. She had gone from a life dictated by others to one where she was reclaiming her freedom, step by step. She realized that her escape was not just a physical act but an emotional and mental one, a journey toward independence and self-determination. And in this journey, she had found someone who not only protected her but also respected her choices, a rare and precious presence in her world. He lay awake for a while longer, reflecting on how a chance encounter had led to this extraordinary situation. He felt a deep sense of responsibility, admiration, and a quiet connection that was growing stronger with each passing day. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he also knew that together, they could navigate the difficulties, find safety, and perhaps even discover something unexpected: trust, companionship, and maybe even love. In the stillness of the night, the apartment became a small haven against the outside world. Each quiet moment, each careful step, and each shared word built a foundation of safety and understanding. It was fragile and tentative, yet it was enough to sustain them. They had begun to understand that facing fear with courage, planning with awareness, and leaning on someone who truly cared could make even the darkest situations bearable. By the time dawn approached, they had grown more attuned to each other's rhythms. They knew when to speak, when to act, and when to simply sit in silence. The day had tested them, forced them to confront fear directly, yet it had also strengthened their bond. They were learning to rely on each other, to trust, and to face challenges as a unit. And in this shared experience, they found a glimmer of hope. A hope that despite the danger, despite the uncertainty, they could carve a path towards safety and freedom, together. The next day began with a tense quiet, a feeling that lingered in the air despite the sunlight streaming through the windows. They both knew that the danger was real and could reach them at any moment. She moved carefully, alert to every sound, every shadow, while he stayed close, offering support and guidance. The bond they had formed over the previous days had deepened, built not only on trust, but on the understanding that each needed the other to face the challenges ahead. They spent the morning preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. She packed a small bag with essentials, clothes, documents, a few personal items she couldn't bear to leave behind. He helped her organize everything, making sure she had what she needed without drawing attention to herself. They planned a series of steps to keep her safe, moving between locations, using secure lines of communication, and being cautious in public spaces. Every detail mattered, and every decision was made with care. In the afternoon, the threat became immediate. They noticed a car parked nearby that seemed out of place, its tinted windows hiding the occupants inside. She froze, fear gripping her chest, and he quickly pulled her into a side street, keeping her hidden from view. They crouched behind a wall, hearts pounding, listening as the engine of the car idled for a moment before driving away. The encounter was brief, but it was enough to remind them that the millionaire's reach was long, and that their precautions were necessary. She looked at him, her eyes wide with anxiety. "What if he finds me?" she whispered. He took her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "We will make sure he doesn't. We have to stay smart, stay careful, and trust each other. That's all we can do right now." His calmness gave her a measure of comfort, a reminder that she wasn't facing the threat alone. The fear was still there, but with him by her side, it felt less paralyzing. They decided to move to a safer location temporarily, somewhere less predictable. The journey was slow and deliberate, taking back streets and avoiding main roads. She clung to his presence, finding strength in the small, subtle acts of protection he offered. A guiding hand, a gentle word, a watchful eye. She realized that while her situation was dangerous, she was not powerless. Together, they were navigating the threat, making choices that gave her agency and a sense of control she hadn't felt in weeks. Once they reached the new safe place, a modest guest house in a quiet part of the city, they took a moment to breathe. She rested on the bed, still tense but slightly more relaxed. He moved around the room, making sure it was secure, checking windows and locks, and preparing a space where she could feel some comfort. The simple routines, the quiet preparations, created a sense of normalcy in an otherwise tense and unpredictable situation. That evening, they spoke about the confrontation that could come. She admitted that part of her fear was not just the danger itself, but the unknown, the uncertainty of what the millionaire might do and how far he might go. He listened, acknowledging her fear while also reminding her of the steps they had taken to protect her. "We cannot control everything," he said, "but we can control how we respond. And we are not alone. We have each other, and that counts for a lot." Their conversation drifted to memories and personal reflections, small moments of lightness amidst the tension. She shared stories from her past, moments of joy and simplicity that had been overshadowed by the pressure and fear she had endured. He shared his own experiences, stories that were ordinary but comforting, grounding them both in the reality of their humanity. These moments of connection were vital, allowing them to maintain emotional strength even as the threat lingered. Late that night, the confrontation arrived. A sudden noise outside startled them. and they realized that someone was attempting to approach the building. He moved quickly, guiding her to a secure spot and preparing for whatever might come. The doorbell rang and they could hear a voice calling out her name, demanding to be let in. She trembled and he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We know how to handle this." They refused to answer the door and the situation escalated briefly with threats and loud knocks. He called the local authorities discreetly, explaining the situation without revealing too much, ensuring her safety through official channels. The confrontation was tense, but they managed to hold their ground. She realized in that moment how much she had relied on him and how much she had grown in courage herself. She had been afraid, yes, but she had stayed with him, faced the danger and not fled in panic. That small victory was significant. After the confrontation passed and the noise subsided, they both sat quietly, processing the intensity of the evening. She leaned against him, finding comfort in his presence while he reflected on how extraordinary her courage had been. The danger had tested them, challenged their nerves, and yet they had emerged stronger, more connected, and more determined to protect one another. The following days were spent planning for her long-term safety. They sought legal counsel to ensure that her escape from the engagement was recognized and protected by law. She worked on securing her identity and creating a plan that allowed her to live independently, without fear of interference. He assisted her in every step, not out of obligation but out of genuine care. The shared efforts, the collaborative problem-solving, strengthened their bond further. During this time, they also allowed themselves small moments of relaxation, walking in quiet parks, visiting cafes under the guise of ordinary life, and sharing laughter that felt almost stolen from their otherwise tense reality. These moments reminded her that life could be lived beyond fear, that joy and connection were still possible even after the darkness she had endured. She began to see him not just as a protector, but as a partner, someone who respected her autonomy and shared in her challenges. One evening, as they watched the sunset from a quiet terrace, she spoke softly. "I never imagined I could feel this safe again. I never imagined someone would care without asking for something in return." He turned to her, his expression sincere. "You deserve safety, respect, and freedom. I'm here because I want to help you, because I care. That's all." The simplicity of his words resonated deeply with her, reinforcing the trust and affection that had grown between them. In the days that followed, they continued to navigate the balance between vigilance and normalcy. Each step was carefully considered, each movement intentional. Yet they found ways to laugh, to talk, and to share moments that reminded them of life beyond fear. She grew stronger, more confident in her ability to face the world, while he grew more attuned to her needs and the quiet ways in which she expressed trust and gratitude. By the end of the week, they had established a rhythm. The danger from the millionaire had not disappeared entirely, but they had created a network of precautions, a set of plans, and a level of preparedness that gave her hope. She began to envision a future where she could live freely, make her own choices, and reclaim her life fully. And he realized that their journey, while born out of fear and necessity, had transformed into something meaningful, a partnership rooted in trust, care, and shared resilience. As they settled into the night, the quiet of the apartment felt comforting rather than oppressive. The bond they had formed was now undeniable, a connection forged through shared fear, courage, and moments of human tenderness. She rested with a sense of security she had not known in weeks, and he watched over her, aware of the responsibility he carried but also of the extraordinary trust she had placed in him. In the stillness, they both understood that the confrontation had been more than just a physical or strategic challenge. It had been a turning point, a moment where fear, courage, and trust collided, creating a foundation for the next stage of their journey. They had faced danger together, and in doing so, they had discovered the strength, resilience, and bond that would carry them forward, whatever the future might hold. The morning air was calm, almost serene, but they both knew that the world outside could never truly be taken for granted. She had spent weeks in fear, planning every step, and yet the journey had brought a surprising sense of freedom she hadn't known before. She looked out the window, breathing in the fresh morning air, and for a moment allowed herself to imagine a life without constant fear. He stood nearby, watching her quietly, his presence a steady reassurance that she wasn't facing the world alone. They spent the day organizing the next phase of her life. There were practical tasks to accomplish: securing legal documents, arranging a temporary place to stay safely, and preparing for long-term independence. She felt a strange mixture of relief and anxiety. Relief because she was finally taking control, and anxiety because the weight of decisions and responsibility pressed on her. He assisted her calmly, offering guidance without judgment, helping her weigh choices and consider consequences. It was teamwork in its most basic form, a collaboration grounded in trust and mutual respect. While working together, they shared small, ordinary moments that reminded them of life's simple pleasures. They walked through nearby streets unnoticed by the world, enjoying the warmth of the sun and the gentle rustle of leaves. They shared coffee in a quiet cafe, savoring the normalcy of being ordinary people rather than fugitives. These moments, small as they were, felt like treasures. She realized that even in a life once dictated by fear, there could be fragments of peace, laughter, and connection. As they returned to the safe place, they found that planning and preparation had shifted her mindset. She no longer felt entirely like a victim. She felt like someone reclaiming agency over her life. Every small decision reinforced her sense of independence. She could choose where to go, what to do, and how to move forward. This newfound autonomy was invigorating, and she began to sense a future where fear no longer dictated her existence. In the evening, a quiet reflection led them to talk about the journey they had shared. She confessed with a faint smile that she hadn't expected to trust anyone so completely, especially someone she had met under such extraordinary circumstances. He responded with honesty, admitting that he too hadn't anticipated the depth of connection they had formed. The bond between them had grown beyond simple protection. It was respect, trust, and genuine care. As night fell, they prepared a modest meal together. The routine of cooking side by side became a comforting ritual, a way to create normalcy amidst the lingering shadow of danger. They laughed softly at small mishaps and exchanged stories of past experiences, finding warmth in shared humanity. For her, these simple acts of companionship were revolutionary. They were moments where she felt seen, valued, and safe without pretense. Later, they discussed long-term plans. She wanted to build a life independent of fear, one where she could make her own choices without interference. He supported her in every step, helping her consider options realistically while encouraging her to trust her instincts. They created a roadmap for her independence: safe locations, support networks, and careful strategies to maintain privacy. Each step they planned strengthened her confidence, turning what once seemed like a fragile sense of hope into tangible progress. The days that followed were a blend of cautious preparation and small joys. They explored safe corners of the city, enjoyed quiet walks, and shared moments of laughter that felt almost forbidden given their past anxiety. Each shared experience reinforced the sense that life, even after hardship, could hold beauty and connection. She began to understand that courage wasn't only about fleeing danger. It was about reclaiming life, embracing independence, and trusting herself in the world. One evening, as the sun set in a warm glow, she shared her reflections with him. "I never imagined I could feel safe again, let alone happy," she said softly. He nodded, understanding the depth of her journey. "You've fought hard for your freedom. You've faced fear with courage, and you've reclaimed your life step by step. That's something to be proud of." Her eyes glistened, not with fear, but with a mixture of relief and quiet joy. She was beginning to see herself not as a person running from life, but as someone reclaiming it. As the final pieces of her plan fell into place, legal protections, secure living arrangements, and a carefully considered path forward, they felt a sense of closure. The immediate danger from the millionaire had been mitigated, though the memory of it lingered. Yet they had emerged stronger, more connected, and more prepared to face life's uncertainties. Together, they had created safety through vigilance, trust, and teamwork, and in the process discovered resilience within themselves. They spent the last night in the temporary safe place, reflecting quietly. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the person who had been her anchor throughout the chaos. He had offered protection, guidance, and understanding without demanding anything in return. She realized that the bond they shared was rare, built on trust, courage, and shared experience rather than obligation or expectation. In the morning, they prepared to move forward. She would leave the temporary space secure in her independence, with the tools and knowledge to protect herself. But there was also a sense that something had changed between them, a connection that went beyond circumstance. They had shared fear, courage, and triumph, and in that a deep bond had formed. Neither could deny the significance of the journey they had taken together. Before parting for the day, she turned to him. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice full of sincerity. "For everything." He smiled, a quiet warmth in his eyes. "You've earned this. You've fought, survived, and taken control of your life. I'm just glad I could help along the way." Their exchange was simple, yet it carried the weight of shared struggle, mutual respect, and unspoken understanding. As she stepped out into the world, she felt a sense of liberation she had not known before. The fear that had dominated her life was no longer the defining force. She had a plan, resources, and a newfound confidence that she could navigate challenges on her own. And in her heart, she carried the knowledge that someone had believed in her, supported her, and walked alongside her through one of the most difficult periods of her life. He watched her leave, feeling a mixture of pride, admiration, and a quiet connection that would not easily fade. He knew that the journey had changed both of them, leaving an indelible mark on their lives. The story that had begun with fear, urgency, and uncertainty had transformed into one of courage, resilience, and human connection. In the days that followed, she settled into her new routine, careful yet free, rebuilding her life on her own terms. The experience had taught her that strength comes not only from fleeing danger, but from facing it with intelligence, courage, and trust in others. And though the millionaire's shadow lingered only in memory, she no longer felt powerless. She had reclaimed her life step by step, with determination and bravery. He continued with his own life, quietly reflecting on the extraordinary events that had brought them together. The encounter had been unexpected, intense, and transformative. He had witnessed courage, resilience, and the human spirit in action. And in that witnessing, he had found a deep respect and connection that would stay with him, a reminder that ordinary people could face extraordinary circumstances and emerge stronger. Their story ended not with fear or uncertainty, but with a sense of resolution and hope. She had reclaimed her freedom, her autonomy, and her sense of self, and he had been a part of that journey, offering support, understanding, and trust. The lessons they learned about courage, resilience, and the power of human connection would carry them forward, shaping their lives in ways that no fear or threat could undo. As she moved into the next chapter of her life, she did so with confidence and a newfound belief in her ability to face challenges. She had survived the impossible, navigated the dangers of the unknown, and discovered that strength often comes from unexpected places. And he, knowing the part he had played, carried forward a sense of fulfillment and connection that would remain with him always. The story of her escape, the danger she faced, and the bond that had formed between them became a testament to human resilience. It was a tale of courage, trust, and the extraordinary outcomes that can arise when people face fear together, support one another, and find strength in the most unlikely circumstances. And in the quiet moments that followed, both of them knew that life had changed irrevocably, but for the better, marked by freedom, connection, and the triumph of the human spirit.